My friends bet I couldn't do better than you. I'm just proving them wrong. She smirked after I saw her sitting on another man's lap. I replied, prove this too. Then I took a photo, sent it to her parents with your daughter at her best, and left. She called panicking. Her dad had seen it. The first crack in our foundation wasn't a fight. It was a sigh. It happened 2 weeks ago. I was on the couch finishing up some code for a work project and Chloe was scrolling through her phone, her feet draped over my lap. She let out this long weary sigh, the kind that begs for a question. What's up? I asked, my eyes still half on my screen. It's just Jessica's boyfriend surprised her with a weekend in Napa. Helicopter tour, the whole thing. She scrolled, her thumb flicking aggressively. And Mike just bought Lauren that new Prada bag she wanted. The one she posted. I remember the feeling. It wasn't jealousy. It was a quiet exhaustion. That's nice for them, I said, aiming for neutral. We had a great weekend too. That hike was perfect. She put her phone down and looked at me, not with anger, but with a kind of theatrical pity. A hike, Alex. We packed sandwiches. It's just different vibes. You know, your vibe is very stable. Very predictable. I should have said something then, but I'd heard variations of this before. Chloe lived in a world of vibes, of aesthetics, of social currency. My world was built on logic, on reliability. I thought we balanced each other. Lately, I'd started to feel like I was just the ballast in her speeding hot air balloon, necessary to keep her from flying away entirely, but dead weight all the same. Her friend group was the embodiment of her vibe. Jared, Mark, Jessica, Lauren, a constellation of trust funds, vague influencer aspirations, and a constant, desperate need to be seen as winning. I was the odd piece, a software engineer who liked his job, his friends, and the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved. I was, in their parliament, chill. I now realize it was a synonym for boring, which is why the text that night set off a quiet alarm in my head. Chloe, 8:47 p.m. Hey, change of plans. The group decided on the air. Meet us there. Table under Jared's name. Don't be late. It's popping off tonight. The area was a rooftop bar in the heart of the trendy district, famous for its views, its $20 cocktails, and its ruthless door policy. I'd been once for a work thing. It wasn't my scene, but Chloe loved it. She loved the glittering cityscape backdrop for her selfies. She loved the feeling of being inside the velvet rope. I parked my sensible sedan in a lot a few blocks away. The digital fee making me was. As I rode the elevator up to the rooftop, I smoothed down my simple button-down, feeling underdressed already. The thump of bass grew louder. The doors opened into a wall of curated sound, clinking glass, and the shriek of laughter I recognized. The place was packed. I wove through the crowd looking for their table. I saw the back of Jessica's head, Lauren's distinctive laugh, but the chairs were empty. I scanned the roped-off VIP section to the left, a slightly elevated platform with plush loungers, and a dedicated server. There they were. Jared was holding court in the center, a bottle of vodka in an ice bucket on the table beside him. And on his lap, tucked under his arm, was Chloe. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something black and razor-strap tight. She was laughing, throwing her head back, her hand resting on Jared's chest. A cold numbness spread from my chest out to my fingertips. I moved towards the rope. A broad-shouldered bouncer in a black suit materialized, his arm a polite but immovable barrier. This section is reserved. Sir, my girlfriend is at that table. Chloe with Jared. He glanced over then back at me. His expression not unkind, just professionally blank. You're not on the list. They'd have had to add you. I was locked out, literally and figuratively. I stood there feeling like a tourist at my own relationship's execution. Chloe chose that moment to look over. Her laughter died. Her eyes met mine. I saw a flash of something. Surprise, maybe a flicker of guilt, but it was snuffed out in an instant, replaced by a cool, evaluating look. She whispered something to Jared, who smirked and said something that made mark. She slid off Jared's lap, smoothed her dress, and sauntered to the rope line. Use. I could smell her perfume, the expensive one I'd bought her for her birthday. It felt like a betrayal all its own. Alex, she said, her voice carrying over the music. It wasn't a greeting. It was an announcement. You made it, Chloe. What's going on? My voice sounded calm, even to me. The numbness was insulating. She leaned against the velvet rope, a queen addressing a commoner. Alex, look. She gestured vaguely behind her, encompassing Jared, her friends, the bottle service, the whole glittering facade. This was fun, but it's run its course. The words were so cliché, so rehearsed, they almost bounced off the ice forming inside me. Run its course. We lived together. It was a factual statement. We had a lease. We shared a grocery list on the fridge. She let out that sigh again. The one I now understood was pure performance. She glanced back at her audience who were watching with the rapt attention of people seeing the final act of a play they'd already read the spoilers for. She turned back to me and her lips curled into the most brittle, contemptuous smirk I'd ever seen. "My friends bet me I couldn't do better than you." She said it clearly, ensuring every syllable reached her friends. A titter of laughter rose from the table. Jared raised his glass in a mock toast. "I'm just proving them wrong." The words hung in the smoky air between us. They weren't just cruel. They were cheap. Our 2 years reduced to the stakes of a childish bet. The cold numbness in my veins ignited into a single sharp point of absolute clarity. I looked past her, at Jared's smug, handsome face, at Jessica's phone pointed right at us, at the whole pathetic tableau. I looked back at Chloe, her smirk daring me to cry, to yell, to beg. I didn't. I nodded slowly, as if considering a mildly interesting problem. My voice, when it came, was quiet, flat, and perfectly audible in the space her declaration had carved out. "Prove this too." Her smirk faltered, replaced by confusion. "What?" I already had my phone out. I didn't raise it quickly. I made a show of it. Opening the camera app deliberately, I saw her eyes widen in understanding. "Alex, don't you dare." The flash went off. A perfect stark high-resolution image. Chloe caught mid-transition from cruelty to shock. The VIP rope in the foreground. Jared lounging like a king behind her, her friends frozen in various stages of drunken glee. It was a masterpiece of context. I looked at the screen at the damning evidence. I nodded again to myself this time. "Got it. Delete that," she shrieked, her cool facade shattering. She tried to reach over the robe, but the bouncer shifted, his bulk reminder of the barrier she herself had chosen. "Alex, I swear to God, delete it right now." I didn't answer. I slid my phone into my pocket, turned on my heel, and walked back toward the elevator. Her shouts chased me. "You pathetic loser. Come back here." But they were swallowed by the music and the city's hum behind the glass walls. The elevator doors closed on the sound of her fury. The sudden silence was deafening. I leaned against the wall, the cold glass of relief against my back. My heart was pounding, but my mind was preternaturally still. The puzzle was complete. The distant behavior, the sighs, the insults disguised as observations. It all led here to a rooftop bar where I was the punchline of a bet. As the elevator descended, I wasn't thinking about the lost love that felt like it had vanished months ago. I was thinking about the photo in my pocket, and I was thinking about Robert, Chloe's self-made, no-nonsense father who valued honor and discretion above all things. The man who just 3 months ago over a steak dinner had looked me in the eye and said, "You're good for her, Alex. You ground her." The game wasn't over. She had just proven to her friends she could be cruel. It was my turn to prove something to the only person whose opinion ever truly scared her. The city air outside the area was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the pressurized chaos. I just left. I didn't run. I walked with a steady, deliberate pace back to the parking garage. The numbness had solidified into a kind of operating system. Clean, logical, and task-oriented. Heartbreak was a luxury for later. Right now, there were protocols to follow. I got into my car but didn't start it. I sat in the dark, the only light from my phone screen. I opened the photo. It was better than I'd hoped. The flash had illuminated every detail. The smug curve of Jared's mouth, the glitter of cheap triumph in the friend's eyes, and Chloe. Especially Chloe. Her expression was captured in a perfect limbo between cruel dismissal and panicked surprise. It told the whole story. My thumb hovered over the share button. The primal angry part of me wanted to blast it to every mutual friend to post it with her own mocking quote as the caption, but that was her game. That was their currency. Public shaming, social warfare. I thought of Robert, Chloe's father, a man who'd built a construction supply company from the ground up with hands that were permanently calloused and a detector calibrated to nuclear levels. He valued loyalty, integrity, and directness. He hated frills, gossip, and what he called entitled pageantry. Chloe spent her life performing for her friends, but she lived for the rare hard-won nod of approval from her dad. I navigated to my contacts, past Chloe's name, to the entry saved as Robert C. My finger hesitated for only a second. This wasn't an act of rage. It was an act of reporting, a transfer of information to the relevant authority. I composed the text with the care of writing a critical piece of code. It had to be concise, factual, and unassailable. "Mr. Connolly, I regret to inform you that Chloe has ended our relationship tonight. I believe you should see the context in which she chose to do it. I valued your respect. Alex." I attached the photo. I did not add emojis, punctuation for drama, or follow-up questions. I let the image speak. I hit send. A strange profound silence settled in the car. The deed was done. There was no undo button. I started the engine and drove toward the apartment. Our apartment, for the last time. The drive was a blur of streetlights. My mind was a blank map, plotting only the next 3 moves. Pack essentials. Secure documents. Leave. I used my key. The apartment felt instantly foreign, like a museum exhibit of a life that had just been terminated. There was the couch where she'd sighed about hikes. The kitchen island where I'd cooked her pasta while she talked about Jessica's helicopter ride. It was all just set dressing. Now I went to the bedroom and pulled my old duffel bag from the top of the closet. I worked with efficiency. Laptop, charger, passport, a small lockbox with my social security card and car title. From the dresser, I took only practical clothes: jeans, t-shirts, sweaters. I left behind the nice shirt she bought me for her parents' anniversary dinner. It felt like a costume now. In the bathroom, I swept my toiletries into a do kit. My toothbrush stood alone in the holder. Hers was in her purse at the bar on a night that was supposed to prove something. The symbolism was almost too pat. Finally, I stopped in the doorway of the bedroom. On the dresser was a framed photo from that dinner with her parents 6 months ago. Robert had his arm around Chloe's mother, a rare soft smile on his face. Chloe, beaming, was sandwiched between them. I was on the end, looking slightly awkward, but happy. Robert's hand was on my shoulder. "Take care of her, Alex." I didn't take the photo. I turned and walked out. I loaded the duffel into my trunk. Before I got in the car, I did 2 more things. First, I opened my banking app and transferred my half of the next month's rent into our shared account. The one she never checked, the one I used to pay bills. I added a note: rent for October. Lease termination to follow. No drama, just business. Second, and finally, I went to my phone settings. I found Chloe's contact. I didn't delete it. I blocked her number. Then, I blocked her on every social platform I could remember. It wasn't an act of anger. It was a firewall. She had chosen to make me an outsider. I was now making that choice permanent and secure. I drove to a mid-tier hotel near the airport, the kind used by business travelers and people in transition. I paid for a week in cash from my emergency fund. The room was bland, beige, and blissfully silent. I placed my duffel by the desk. I took out my laptop, but didn't open it. I just sat on the edge of the bed in the absolute quiet and let the silence press in. The emotional wave I'd been holding back finally crested. It wasn't tears for her. It was a deep shuddering ache for the future I'd thought we were building. The one I'd compromised for, planned for, and believed in. The betrayal wasn't just that she'd left. It was that she'd made a joke of everything I'd offered. My stability, my loyalty, my quiet love. They were the losing side of a bet. I lay back on the stiff hotel bedspread and stared at the acoustic tiled ceiling. The injustice of it burned, clean and hot. I had been loyal. I had been committed. And I had been discarded like a used prop in a cheap play. But beneath the burn, something else was stirring. A faint, cold ember of power. I had not screamed. I had not begged. I had not thrown a punch or smashed her things. I had taken a photograph. I had sent a text. I had walked away. And in doing so, I had taken control of the narrative away from her and her cackling friends. The story was no longer Chloe upgrades from her boring boyfriend. It was now a different story altogether. One that had just landed with a silent seismic thud in the inbox of the one man whose opinion could actually change the course of her life. My phone face down on the nightstand remained dark and silent. Hers, I knew, was about to light up like a war zone, but that was no longer my concern. My firewall was up. For the first time in months, my mind, though bruised, was my own. The first morning light in the hotel room was gray and thin. I slept in fits, the sterile sheets unfamiliar, but I slept. There was no twisting agony, just a hollow, weary acceptance. My phone, when I checked it at 7 a.m., showed only notifications from work and a weather update. The firewall was holding. I went through the motions. I showered. I dressed in the clean, simple clothes from my duffel. I went downstairs and ate a bland complimentary breakfast surrounded by quiet strangers with rolling suitcases. The normality of it was its own kind of anesthetic. By 10 a.m. curiosity, cold and clinical, got the better of me. I needed to assess the fallout not for emotional gratification but for situational awareness, like checking the weather after a storm warning. I went into my phone settings and with deliberate care temporarily unblocked Chloe's number for a second. Nothing happened. Then the screen exploded. A torrent of notifications cascaded down. Missed calls, voicemail alerts, text message after text message, a frantic, chaotic scroll of desperation and rage. The first one had come in at 11:37 p.m. last night. Chloe, 11:37 p.m. What did you do, Chloe? 11:41 p.m. My dad just called me. He saw that. Alex, answer your phone. Chloe, 11:53 p.m. Call him right now and tell him it was a joke. A prank. Tell him we were filming a stupid skit for TikTok or something. Chloe, 12:15 a.m. He's not answering my calls now. This isn't funny. Chloe, 12:48 a.m. My card just got declined at the bar. What the hell did you say to him? I scrolled, dispassionate. The tone shifted as the night wore on. Chloe, 1:22 a.m. Jared was just a joke. It meant nothing. You know how my friends are. You're taking this way too seriously. Chloe, 2:05 a.m. I'm at the apartment. Where are you? We need to talk. Chloe, 3:11 a.m. You're trying to ruin my life. My dad manages my trust fund. He's talking about making me learn responsibility. This is your fault. Chloe, 4 a.m. Alex, please just apologize to him. Tell him we're back together. Tell him it was staged. I'll do anything. The final text was from an hour ago. Chloe, 8:57 a.m. Answer me or I'm coming to find you. There were 7 voicemails. I put the phone on speaker, poured a glass of water from the bathroom tap, and listened. Voicemail 1. 11:45 p.m. Her voice was a shrill, hyperventilating shriek competing with club music in the background. Alex, what did you do? My dad saw that. You have to call him and tell him it was a joke. A prank. He can't. He's saying things about my allowance. Call him right now. Voicemail 3. 1:15 a.m. The music was gone. Now she was outside, maybe in an Uber. The hysteria was morphing into anger. You are such a petty little man. Do you know how embarrassing that was? Sending that to my father. That was private. You've ruined everything for a stupid photo. Fix it. Voicemail 5. 3:30 a.m. She was crying now, but they were the sharp, furious tears of a child whose toy has been taken away. He froze everything. My card, my monthly deposit. He said, if I had time to act like a fool on a rooftop, I had time to learn the value of money. You need to come home. You need to tell him we're working it out. He liked you. He'll listen to you. The last voicemail from 45 minutes ago was the most chilling. The tears were gone. Her voice was low, cold, and utterly entitled. Alex, this is your last chance. Be at the apartment by noon. We will call my father together. You will tell him you are drunk and jealous and that you fabricated the situation. If you do this, we can maybe salvage something. If you don't, you'll be sorry. I'm not losing my life because you can't take a joke. I deleted the voicemails. I sat with my back against the headboard, the quiet of the room amplifying the silent echoes of her panic. It was all about damage control, not remorse, not an apology to me. The betrayal wasn't the issue. The consequence was, my phone rang. It was her. The screen flashed with her name, a photo of her smiling from a happier time. I let it ring 3 times, then I swiped to answer. I said nothing. Alex. Her voice was strained, raw from shouting and crying. Yes. Oh, thank God. Look, you need to come home right now. We need to call my dad together. No. A beat of stunned silence. What do you mean no? Alex, be reasonable. This is my future. You ended our future last night, I said, my voice even in quiet. This is the consequence. Consequence for what? For having fun. For living my life. You were always so judgmental. So small. The anger was back, a familiar weapon. You need to fix this. Tell him we're back together. We're not then. Lee, she screamed into the phone. I held it slightly away from my ear. Tell him you overreacted. Tell him you're sorry. My dad respects you. He'll believe it. Just do this one thing. Goodbye, Chloe. Don't you dare hang up on him. I ended the call. I immediately re-blocked her number. The silence rushed back in, purer than before. The information gathering wasn't over. I had one trusted mutual friend, Ben. He'd never been part of Chloe's core circle. He was my friend from college who'd moved to the city. He was grounded, observant, and hated drama. I texted him, hey, Chloe and I are done. It's messy. Might hear some things. Just wanted you to hear it from me first. His reply was almost instant. Ben? Dude, I already heard. Are you okay? Me? I will be. What did you hear? 3 dots appeared and disappeared for a long moment. Then Jessica called my girlfriend, freaking out. Said Chloe's dad completely cut her off. Frozen trust, canceled credit cards, the works. Apparently, he called it a masterclass in poor character and poorer judgment. Said she could learn the value of $1 since she valued so little else. A grim satisfaction, clean and sharp, settled in my chest. Robert's words were a direct brutal echo of the values he'd always preached. Ben also Jared is a piece of work. Apparently, after you left, he told Chloe it was getting too heavy and that he wasn't looking for a project. He left with some other girl an hour later. Chloe had to beg Jessica for an Uber home. Ben, the friend group, is distancing. Mark called the whole thing a bad look. Jessica's pissed because she thinks it makes their squad look trashy. They're all worried about their own reputations now. Me, thanks for telling me. Ben, anytime. For what it's worth, you deserve way better. Let me know if you need a couch. I put the phone down. The karma wasn't mystical. It was cause and effect. She had traded my steadfastness for social currency, only to find that currency was counterfeit and her bank account was closed. She had chosen a man who saw her as entertainment and was discarded when the show got boring. She had valued the opinions of fickle friends who were now scattering to protect their own brand. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, weary validation. The world in its own harsh way was simply reflecting back the choices she had made on that rooftop. A final piece of information came through a few hours later via a formal email to our shared account from the property management company. It was a lease violation warning for excessive noise and disturbance last night, citing a complaint from the downstairs neighbor about a woman screaming and throwing things in our unit between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. I closed the laptop. The middle was breathing. The unfairness of the betrayal was now being counterbalanced by the inexorable math of consequences. My path was silence, distance, and self-repair. Hers, as seen through the keyhole of these communications, was unraveling into a desperate, angry scramble to regain a privilege she had never earned and had just spectacularly set on fire. I went for a long walk. I didn't think about her. I thought about what I would have for dinner, about a new coding language I wanted to learn, about the quiet pleasure of a schedule that belonged only to me. The ember of power wasn't about her downfall. It was about my freedom. And with every step away from that hotel, that life, that person, the ember grew steadily, quietly into a flame. 7 months is a long time in a life being rebuilt. It's enough time for a hotel room to become a temporary apartment and for that apartment to become a bright, airy condo with a lease in only your name. It's enough time to get promoted to lead developer on the strength of focused work. It's enough time to relearn the pleasure of Saturday mornings with a book. The silence broken only by the coffee machine. And it's enough time to meet someone. Sarah wasn't anything like Chloe. Where Chloe was a performance, Sarah was a conversation. She was a graphic designer with a quiet wit and a steady, observant gaze. Our first date was at a bookstore cafe that Chloe would have deemed quaint, her code for boring. We talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. There was no calculation, no posturing. It was just easy. On a crisp Saturday afternoon, we were at our favorite spot, a rustic brewery with long communal tables and a patio filled with dogs. I was in a well-worn flannel, Sarah in a soft sweater, her hand resting lightly on my forearm as she finished a story about a difficult client. We were sharing a pretzel. I was, for the first time in over a year, genuinely and uncomplicatedly happy. The past felt like a poorly written book I'd checked out of a library long ago. The universe, with its ironic sense of timing, chose that moment to turn a page. I saw her first from across the patio. The change was jarring. Chloe was bundled in a cheap L-looking puffer coat, her hair pulled back in a careless ponytail. She looked older, tired. She was with Mia, a peripheral friend from the old group who always looked vaguely apologetic. They were being seated 2 tables away. Chloe's eyes swept the patio, a habitual scan for status or recognition. They locked onto me. The shock on her face was immediate, followed by a complex flood of emotions. Hope, desperation, a flicker of the old vanity. She said something sharply to Mia, who winced and began weaving through the tables toward us. Sarah felt me go still. She followed my gaze. "Someone you know?" she asked, her voice low and calm. "My ex?" I said, equally quiet. "The one from the rooftop." Sarah's eyebrows lifted slightly in understanding. She didn't tense up or move her hand. She simply gave a small composed nod. Her presence was an anchor. Chloe stopped at the edge of our table. She ignored Sarah completely, her eyes drilling into me. "Alex, hi." Her voice tried for casual but landed in strained territory. "You look good, Chloe," I replied, giving a single nod of acknowledgement. Nothing more. The silence stretched. She shifted her weight, clearly expecting more. An inquiry, a reaction, something to grab onto. "Look," she faltered, her rehearsed lines failing in the face of my utter stillness. She tried again, forcing a tremble into her voice. "I've had a lot of time to think, a lot of time alone." She emphasized the last word, waiting for sympathy. None came. What I said on the roof, those were my words. I was trying to impress people who don't matter. People who are gone now. She finally glanced at Sarah, a quick dismissive flick of her eyes before turning her full pleading attention back to me. "You mattered. We mattered." I said nothing. I just waited. My expression one of polite, detached patience. Her composure cracked a little. The desperation leaked through. "My dad, he still won't fully reinstate things. He says, I need to demonstrate sustained maturity." She said the words like they were a foreign and unfair concept. "If he knew we were talking, if he saw we could be civil, it would help. It would prove unstable." She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Maybe we could even get coffee sometime. Just talk. Start over. The real you and me without all the noise." This was her play. Not an apology to me, but a proposal to use me as a character reference for her father. A stepping stone back to her old funding. It was Sarah who broke the silence first, not with words, but with a subtle, almost imperceptible squeeze on my arm. It wasn't possessive. It was supportive. "I'm here. This is your show." I looked at Chloe, Really looked at her for the first time since she'd walked over. I saw the strain around her eyes, the cheap coat, the emptiness where her performative confidence used to be. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, nostalgia, just a vast, quiet space where she used to be. "Chloe," I said, my voice calm, clear, and final. It was the tone I used in project meetings to conclude a discussion. "That's not going to happen." She flinched as if struck. "But you were right about one thing that night," I continued, cutting her off gently but firmly. I glanced at Sarah, who met my gaze with a soft, understanding look. I gently placed my hand over hers on the table. A simple, unplanned gesture of unity. "You could do better than the guy I was then. The guy who tolerated disrespect for the sake of peace." I turned my full attention back to Chloe, my gaze steady. "So, I did better. I did better. I build a life that doesn't have a place for drama or bets or proving things to cruel people." I gestured slightly around us. The warm brewery, the happy chatter, the woman beside me. "This is my life now. It's peaceful. It's real. I hope you build a good life for yourself, Chloe. Truly. But it won't include me in any way." The color drained from her face. The carefully constructed mask of remorse shattered, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. Her eyes wide with shock darted between my calm face and my hand linked with Sarah's. The truth that I was not just moving on, but up, and that she was now an irrelevant spectator to it, hit her with physical force. "So that's it." Her voice rose sharp and brittle, drawing a few looks from nearby tables. "After everything we had, after you ruined my relationship with my father, you're just going to sit here with your little rebound and pretend I don't exist?" The venom in the word rebound hung in the air. Sarah didn't react, just watched with a sort of detached academic interest, as if observing a fascinatingly toxic specimen. I didn't engage. I didn't correct her. I simply stood up, pulling out Sarah's chair for her with a quiet courtesy. I threw enough cash on the table to cover our bill and a generous tip. I looked at Chloe one last time. There was no anger in my eyes, no triumph, only the absolute unshakable finality of indifference. "We're done here," I said, my voice flat and definitive. I took Sarah's hand. Together, we turned and walked away, weaving through the tables toward the exit. We didn't look back. I heard a choked, inarticulate sound of fury behind us, quickly hushed by Mia's pleading voice, but it was already fading, becoming just another unimportant noise in the background of my day. Outside, the autumn air was cool and clean. Sarah squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the free, untainted air. I looked at her, at the intelligent compassion in her eyes, and felt the last ghost of that rooftop night dissolve into nothing. "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. "I'm starving. Let's go get that Italian food we talked about." As we walked to the car, my mind wasn't on Chloe, her frozen trust fund, or her desperate, empty eyes. It was on the specific way Sarah laughed when she was truly amused. It was on the complex notes in the Amaran wine I planned to order. It was on the quiet contentment of a Sunday with no storms on the horizon. The closure wasn't in a dramatic speech or a moment of revenge. It was in the simple, profound act of walking away without a backward glance toward a future so bright and full that the shadow of the past could no longer reach me. She had become a footnote, a lesson learned, a closed door, and I was already miles down the road, hand in hand with my peace, never thinking of knocking on it again. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.